It'll just drive you crazy and make you sick. Because for some reason, we don't feel right about removing this tumor from our lives. Now, there are definite things that even the ancients believe, and history goes back. Ancient seers, long before Christ, believed there were cosmic centers in man, which, if understood and controlled, could release tremendous power into his mind, body, and affairs. See, the ancients also believed, this goes back to about 4,500 years ago, to the first, well, at least until the libraries of Alexandria were burned, is that man, the only thing that made man ill was evil. And for some reason, they believed that there were tiny little gnome-like creatures which began to be known as demons that entered your stomach or your throat or your head. And this is where modern religion, so-called modern 2,000 years, got the demon. But there were never any devils until the Indian Eastern, brought this into being. Because they couldn't understand anything about flu or germs or viruses. So if you had a stomachache, you had a devil in your stomach. Thus, that's why bleeding was so apparent. Because the bad humors, HUMOURS, were supposed to have entered the body. The only way to get rid of them, and that was clear up until Washington's time. In fact, that's how Washington died, was because he was bled to death. And that's why the barber pole is red and white, because they used to be the bleeders. And whenever you saw a red and white pole, meant you can come in and be bled. And if you were bled, that was a purging. They got rid of the bad demon or bad humor in your blood. And a lot of people died that way because they didn't know that if you took too much blood out, it was all over for you. The ancient Oriental believed that there were certain pressure points in the body that when pushed on or stuck, release, that were directly related to the chakras, that created a release of any and all negative energy. That's not too far from the truth. Now, whether the needle does anything or the pressure point does anything is just as important that the right pressure point is used or the needle is placed correctly as the person believing in it. It's like Christ said, when a woman said, just by touching the hem of his garment, I will be healed. And Christ said, thy faith has healed thee. It wasn't the hem of his garment as much as her belief in the hem of his garment that healed her. But people get terrified. And yet, we let people invade our body with their negative auras. We let them press upon us. We even let doctors stick needles in our rear ends. We don't even know what's in it. Just say, give me a shot, and we do. We say, did you ever think to ask the doctor, what's in that? And then he says, amoxicillin. You say, oh, okay, as if you know what that means. And even if he said, well, it's a derivative of penicillin, it comes from bread mold, do you still know anymore than you did? No. But you say, okay, now I know. We all do this. But let someone put their hands on the top of your head and say, I am replacing your energy with mine for a short time. And in doing that, I'm not only replacing it, but I'm increasing your own. We go, what? And yet we undergo surgery in which we don't even have a clue. They say, we're going to remove this, take this out, and you'll be fine. We say, okay. Now, there's nothing wrong with that because we get too far along that we have to have surgery. I myself have had to, until I got smart. And I said, wait a minute. Why is it whenever this happens, I have to go in the hospital? And sometimes it's the only way the mind has of saying, you're going to stop. Our bodies speak to us. Larry, you want to turn on some air? Is Larry around here anywhere? Or somebody just went to sleep. Our bodies speak to us literally. I went over this with my channeling class, but because it's the healing class, I think you need to go over it very specifically. Let's start with the top of the head. Around to the face. If you are losing your eyesight, I want you to ask yourself what you have seen too much of. If you are losing your hearing, what are you trying to block out? If you constantly have a sore throat, what tears have you not shed? If you cannot breathe correctly, what kind of unresolved conflict do you have with your mother? And this takes in primarily allergies of the upper respiratory and asthma. If you cannot digest properly, what is it about life you cannot stomach? If you have something wrong with your breath, what do you want to get off your chest? Who is it you want to get off your chest? If you have problems with intestinal tract, such as constipation, what are you holding in? If you have trouble with dysentery, what are you trying to purge? And who are you trying to purge? See, most of the time, when you really get far advanced in this class, which you will, you're going to find out that these have to do more with who's than what's. Because people make us sick more than situations. Because how many times have we said to ourselves and to each other, if it hadn't been for you at the party, I would have had a lousy time. If it hadn't been for you in my life, it would have been miserable. If it hadn't been for you. So it has much more to do with who than what. Most of the time, people that I read for, they don't mind their job. The job itself is alright. It's who's working with them that drives them crazy, that makes them hate the job. The job itself by itself, put in another situation, would be great. Because if we're having fun, we can shovel shit with the chickens. It's true, we can. If we have people around us we love that are, we have camaraderie and all that, we can do almost anything. But you get miserable, negative people around, you're going to hate the job, the building you work, everything about it. It's the people. If you have heart trouble, who has broken your heart? If you have cancer, what have you kept inside that you've hated and couldn't let go of? Now, Carl Simington has done a tremendous study, and he put into actual statistics what I knew in theory years ago. And that is that people that do change their lifestyle, even after being diagnosed with cancer, will recover 95% over the people who do not. And I don't mean just divorcing your husband or your wife or whatever and moving away to another city. No, I mean beginning to change your whole mode of operation by letting out what bothers you. Now we know, see now here's where the medical practice goes totally awry. We know that there is a certain type of headache. The doctor says it's stress. We know that ulcers, absolutely ask any doctor, what causes an ulcer? And he says nerves. Now why do we carry that any farther? Can't migraines also be nerves from something, a pressure of our life, by someone who's causing it? Who is causing the pain in your neck? Who is riding on your back that your low lumbar keeps going out? Who is making your blood boil that you have high blood pressure? Because you know that's what high blood pressure is boiling blood. Who is stopping up your pipes? Why can't you release your urine? Why can't you flush? Skin surface. Who is getting under your skin? Who is irritating you to cause eczema, psoriasis? And on it goes specifically. Why do we gain so much weight? Because we're trying to put armor on in order to protect ourselves. And if we don't have any other insulation to protect ourselves, we put on fat. Because you see, if I get bigger, I get heavier, you get bigger, you get heavier, nobody can hurt you. So we specifically speak to ourselves, and we say, and we always go by with this, don't we? Well, genetically, my whole family's fat, so I'm fat. So genetically, your whole family's crazy, you have to be crazy. Whole family were thieves, you have to be thieves. I mean, that goes on and on with that. Never in the history of the world, according to all medical statistics, do we have people so grossly overweight as they are now. And why? I'll tell you why. Because never in the history of the world, I don't care what anybody says, we've had everything going on like we have now. Anywhere you want to look, we got something going on, whether it's natural tragedy, disasters, wars, and not only that, but look at our news. Before, we always knew that there were wars and everything, but our news makes it 10 times worse. A gnat doesn't fall in Afghanistan and we don't hear about it. And watch it get slaughtered and go to its funeral through the eye of the TV. Our books are filled with the horror. Our media has just about destroyed us. And yet, we're trying to keep up on world affairs, aren't we? They asked me today at PCC, because I went there to give a talk, which is a wonderful organization, by the way. Peninsula Children's Center for Autistic Children. And somebody said, who do you think will be president? And I said, Dole, but I said, does it really matter? And that's not to be embittered, because I think anybody we have from now on is going to be a puppet. I don't think there's any more power there. No. And so, medically, professionally, politically, we have to catch, this is not a new wave movement. This is an old wave that just keeps coming back and nobody listens to. We're going to have to take responsibility for ourselves. Because let me tell you something, my dear friends, and I'm not one of these like Ronta that says in 2 years the world's going to end, because no, we wouldn't be that lucky. It's going to go on and on. The day's going to come, though, in a period, in not too far distant future, at least within the next 10, 15 years, in which we're not going to have the medical accessibility we have. We're not going to have the economy that we have now. We're going to have to learn to rely more on ourselves. And those of us that have learned to heal and take care of and administer, we're going to be far ahead. But how can you hope to heal anybody if you're not all right? Walk in with a walker and say, I'll heal you? That doesn't work. And what I love is a fat doctor telling me how much weight I ought to take off. And that doesn't mean we have to start an aerobics class, but you've got to exercise it. I mean, I don't care if you just walk up and down the shopping mall, at least do something. People are not moving anymore. And it's not so much just for the toning of the body, it's to let your mind know you're alive. Because the mind says, well, she can't be old, look at her running around. He can't be that old because look at he's doing this. And so we become that. Haven't you ever seen, aging does not come on with age. I know 30-year-old people who are senile. Except then it looks cutesy. Then they get to be 60 and it's not cutesy anymore. It's a Gracie Allen syndrome. Oh, I'm so forgetful and I'm so rattled and I'm so this. That's not cutesy, that's stupid. And people are constantly saying out loud so their mind can hear it, I've lost my memory. You can't have lost your memory or you wouldn't remember to say that. Do you ever think that? I said, I can't remember anything. How'd you remember to say that? I think I'm going blind. I think I'm going deaf. I think I've got this. It goes into, now you don't have to get scrupulous about this for God's sake, but it goes into the cosmic atmosphere, it goes into your aura and comes back and slaps you. The depression, the negativity, where do you think it goes? It goes about as far out as your aura goes and stays right there. So you are self-infecting. And every negative thought, if you don't neutralize it, stays right there. Oh, I've had some people go so far the other way. I was sitting with a group because they were stuck one night, and I went over to see this group because they said we hadn't gotten any farther. I was sitting cross-legged on the floor for 2 hours, and I started to get up. And I said, oh my God, I feel like I got arthritis. I couldn't move. And the guy sitting next to me said, oh, the minute you said that, now you got it. I said, oh, shut up. You know, I mean, then you get too carried away. And I'm telling you right now, the only reason we get stiff and arthritic is because we don't move. And the body, we get the Tim Woodman syndrome, like I've told people in the waiting room. They don't move, the joints don't lubricate. Let your car sit and don't move it for a long period of time and then see how well the wheels turn. Don't put any brake fluid in, don't put any oil, and see what happens. And what do they say to you when a car gets all stoved up? What do they say? Take it on the highway and what? Blow, that's right, blow the carbon out. We walk around all stoved up, carbon, negativity, and everything else, and God forbid we should sweat. God forbid. And you hear people saying, my God, I'm sweating like it's dirty. I was in the gym the other day and I heard somebody say, my God, you're sweating. Well, I better never do that again. Yeah. It's not fun to go to a gym 3 times a week and have a trainer who hates you. I'm convinced she does. But you've got to say to yourself, I'm not going to go down without a fight. Because it's true that the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. And it's so much easier, isn't it? You get home at night, you take off your clothes, why? And then you put on tennis shoes and work out and you go walking, or whatever. But we don't have any problem sitting around night after night and then whining about the fact that our back hurts, our legs hurt, we have osteoporosis, PMS, and a man has prostate trouble. Because we begin dying in certain parts of the body because we don't use them. And because we are trying to negate hearing something, seeing something, and so many times when we put on weight or we do all those things, we're really trying to reject our body. Because see, then it's so much easier because then we're not desirable and then we fulfill our own destiny. Well, you see, nobody wants me because I'm fat or I'm ugly or I'm this. And everybody says, you're right. But to make the best of what we have. Do you ever wonder, I do, when we were lining up to get our bodies, what were we thinking of? I don't know what in God's name. I think I just said, oh, just order anything, just whatever's left over. I know I said that. Pieces and parts. And Then we have a thing called supergenetics, in which we find that there is such a thing as people that have the same genetic strain to live long lives. And that can't have always been true because most people died in their 40s 100 years ago. So somewhere or another, somebody in the family got the idea that they weren't going to succumb, or when they did, they would do it very gracefully. That's where your supergenetics come from. Otherwise, we'd all be dying at 40 or 50. So where do the super genes come from? Because somebody in their mind said, aha, I have the answer. My grandmother broke her hip at 84. They said she would never walk. Not at 84. I came over to her house after they set the hip, pinned it. 2 days she was out of the hospital. She was pushing a chair in front of her, cleaning her out.